Welcome our dear viewers to this week's community show. This is a show that touches matters to do with communities, matters also to do with the country generally. But we always bring community leaders, people who work within the community, share with us on a number of issues. Today, we are discussing curriculum, the secondary curriculum, which has now been in place for 3 years since it was commenced by the Ministry of Education. This new curriculum allows students to study only 12 subjects in senior 1 and 2, with 11 of these being compulsory and 1 elective, among other details that the teachers will give us. And the government wanted to move and phase out the old one, which the government don't want to and examine whether new curriculum is indeed achieving that it's set out to achieve. And helping me, of course, I am your host, Martin, and helping me discuss this matter is Modern and Robert. I'll ask each one of them to introduce themselves with what they do, and then we shall commence with the discussion. I'll begin with you, John Robert, and then Modern.
Oh, thank you so much, Martin. My name, like you rightly said, is Akwang John Robert. I'm a teacher at Ndejje Senior Secondary School. I'm one of the master trainers and also a textbook evaluator in the lower secondary curriculum. So briefly, that's what I can say about myself, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Martin. I'm very glad to be on this show. My name is Modern Karema. I'm the Uganda Country Director for STAR Education. STAR Education is an international NGO that works in Uganda, India, Indonesia, and Ethiopia. We mainly do teacher training, teacher capacity building, and in Uganda, we work with the Ministry of Education, Secondary Department, Basic Education Department, and we are now working with NCDC in the capacity building of teachers in the route of the lower secondary curriculum. I'm very glad to be on the show.
John Robert, we've had you on this show before, not so?
Oh yes, I've been in this show before.
And you are very optimistic about this new curriculum, and yeah, we are also optimistic, and many of our viewers expressed quite great interest in this curriculum. Now, would you briefly recap for us what this new curriculum is about? For many people, they wouldn't understand what it is. I studied, years ago in our old, style of having 20 subjects in senior 1 and name it, with everything that a person could land on. So what is new curriculum about?
The new curriculum, the new curriculum that has been termed as the lower secondary curriculum is one that is hinged on the competence-based curriculum. That is in reference to the old curriculum that is right now running in senior 4, 5, and 6. You realize that the old curriculum was majorly knowledge-based. So with the introduction of the new curriculum, which is I could call it codenamed the competence-based curriculum, the focus is on helping learners to be able to do something with the knowledge that they have learned at school. So that is one of the core principles. And what prompted this was a market survey that was conducted by government. Had hired some NGO to carry out a survey on finding out, because they realized that there was a disconnect between the graduates that leave universities and the graduates that are later now joining the world of work. So there was a bit of a disconnect in terms of the skills that they had. For instance, many of the I could call employers would complain that the graduates that are leaving universities do not have the prerequisite skills to allow them to be employed. First, one among of those skills is critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork. These were things that were found to be lacking in these graduates, among others. So a market survey was done. If I recall very well, it was around 2016. And if you check online, you'll get the reports about that market survey. So they found these and many more others. So there was a need to revisit the curriculum that we were churning out in the various schools. So then we came in, then of course with developed partners in the Western world. Then we came in with the competence-based curriculum. And one of the factors also that prompted this was the Senteza Kajubi report of 1992 that advocated for a change in the education system to move away from a theoretical kind of curriculum to a much more practical curriculum. And this is one of the reasons that prompted the introduction of the law secondary curriculum. And then also one of the key factors is also Uganda Vision 2040, where we want to modernize the economy. You cannot do that with a curriculum that is knowledge-based. So therefore, these and many more other reasons prompted the developers of the curriculum to review the curriculum that was handed over to us by the colonial masters, and with the introduction of the lower secondary curriculum. You'll realize that with this curriculum, there is some beauty about it. That yes, much as we are interested in ensuring that many people are equipped with knowledge, we just don't stop there. We don't stop at simply ensuring that learners are imparted with knowledge, but we go a step further by ensuring that the learners are able to do something with the knowledge that they acquire at school. So that was very critical. And then some other very important factor in this curriculum is what I could call, they have embedded certain critical aspects, such as values. Values are very key in this curriculum. We are saying that you look around our society currently, in all spheres, in all fields, you'll realize that many people lack values. So we are saying that if we could tap values right from the school system, then perhaps we will have a better prepared generation that, much as they're executing their work, they are also paying attention to critical values, such as values such as patriotism, for example, such as being social harmony, for instance. There's a lot of strife around us. So we are saying that while we are teaching some of these things, we pay critical attention to some of these values that are very critical as we interact with one another in society. So the other aspect that is very critical in this curriculum that has been embedded is the introduction of the generic skills. These are skills that are pertinent if one is joining the world of work. The skills such as critical thinking, like I've already talked about, and problem solving, innovation, creativity, ICT and mathematical proficiency, because you, much as you're producing, say, for example, a language teacher, the knowledge of math is also important because there are mathematical aspects that he will conduct in his day-to-day running of his affairs, such as if one went to the market, such as one can be able to understand how much he earns, and then also how much he spends, and so on and so forth. Then communication. Yes, many people can talk, but how many are able to communicate effectively? Quite often, what do? We yell, we shout. So we are saying that with the coming of the new curriculum, there is a strong emphasis in equipping learners with communication skills, and which starts with things like listening, which starts with things like reading, which starts with things like writing, and so on and so forth. So briefly, that's what I can say about the new curriculum, Martin.
And thank you for that introduction. And now over to you, Modern. You've heard that this curriculum is more skills-based than knowledge-based. We also understand knowledge is very important, like he has said still, but skills play quite an important role. Over now to you, Modern, as a person who works with an entity that also has experience elsewhere. How important are skills to the educational development of an individual and consequently career development of an individual.
Thanks. Thanks, Martin, and thanks very much, John Robert, for that very elaborate intro to the subject. So just to feed into what John has said, the whole point behind this curriculum and the curriculum change is the creation of what is called a holistic learner, a learner who has the knowledge, yes, but also has the skills and attitudes and values necessary to operate and be successful in the world after work and life after school. And that is both in terms of workforce readiness as well as business startup. Now that feeds into the question we've just asked. How does skilling help a person to be successful after school? Now, there are so many people who have studied marketing, got first class and second upper, but cannot market. There are some people that have studied education, and I'm sure John Robert knows some. The person has a first class or a second upper in education, English literature, but actually cannot run a classroom. So he or she has the knowledge, but does not have the skills necessary to operate and be actually a teacher. Because teaching is not just delivering content. Teaching is delivering the content. It is being able to control what they call classroom control. It is able to relate with learners. It is able to relate with the teachers who are part of your peers. So having the knowledge to teach is different from being a teacher, because the teacher is broader, not just delivering the content. So the reason why skilling is important and why having skills is important for a person is it makes you be able to go and not only do what you started to do, but also to do it very well and therefore thrive. Most people in the field are actually surviving on a day-to-day. You're just happy that the day has ended, but you're not sure that tomorrow will end because you yourself cannot even see what you did in a day as the day closes. So let me give you an example. Just compare these two groups. There is a group of engineers that have studied engineering in Chambogo, Makerere, but you take them to compare them with the Juakalis. People actually do the real work. And tell me, of the two, who actually knows their trade? Is it somebody from Makerere who has studied a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, or somebody who is actually a mechanic, and you call on them? If you have to make a choice between the two, a person with a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering, for example, electrical engineering, and somebody that has been down in Katwe, actually doing the real engineering. If you are to choose between the two, who are you going to call to be able to, to set up your house, to do the engineering in your house, to set up the electrification in your house? And so that is the difference between having knowledge and having the skill. At the end of the day, the person who sells is not the one who has the knowledge of engineering, but the person who actually has the skill to do the actual engineering. And that's what this whole competence-based curriculum. It's actually not a lower secondary curriculum. We call it lower secondary because right now, the group that has started it off is lower secondary. And as John has said, right now, the people that have taken it on are senior 1, senior 3. Next year to be senior 4, the thing being that by 2025 or 24 end, A level can also join in, but it will be the current senior 3s that will continue. So the thing is that by the time a person finishes senior 6, they not only have the knowledge that they have acquired, which all of us studied in, me, you, and John. We use the old curriculum, so we have the knowledge. We know the origin of the Bantu. We know, we know those things, but we have no skills to take forward. We are mainly operating on things that are either inborn or we have, developed over time, and so that is the whole point. So once a person has the knowledge that they need to survive and thrive, and they have acquired those skills during the normal classroom time, they have the values that John has talked about. So the issue of respect. Do you respect each other as teachers in the staff room? Do you respect your seniors? Do you respect people that you work with? That is one issue under the skill, under the values. Do you have the attitudes to work? That's another challenge that is within our workforce. People have knowledge, maybe they have some skills, but the attitude towards work is totally wrong. And so does that person have the attitudes necessary to actually thrive in work? And so once the person has all those, the knowledge, the skills, the values, the attitudes, then they can go leave school, go out and start working and be able to contribute and thrive in the world of work and business. So that is what this whole curriculum change is about. One thing that John has maybe not talked about is the change from the teacher-centered teaching to learner-centered teaching. So as you implement this curriculum, the biggest change actually is not even in the content, but in the what education is called pedagogy, which is the how of teaching. So the how of teaching now in the new curriculum changes from a teacher standing in front and delivering notes. Most of them, of course, because of teaching for long, we're no longer even doing lesson planning. You just go, the same notes that you delivered last year are the same for this age, so you just deliver the notes. Now, with this new change, the main biggest change is the pedagogy, how a teacher teaches. So now, for you to acquire those skills, values, and attitudes, what you do as a teacher is mainly use of group work, in which case you're trying to develop the skills of critical thinking, teamwork, those skills that John has talked about. Another thing that you do mainly is create presentations, class presentations in class, which is dealing with the issue of oratory skills, the ability to present things, which is a huge skill that a huge gap that was missing in the old products of the education system. Somebody knows everything but cannot present. He has a first class but cannot present those very things. So once that changes, so the kids now are working together in groups. They are then presenting together as groups, and they are changing who presents today and presents tomorrow. So they are developing that ability to present their content in class. They are debating, not fighting, which is another skill. If you want to know the difference between debating and people who went through debating and not, just look at our parliament. People just disagreeing, but disagreeing honorably is a problem in this country. So once kids grow up in that setup, in that system, then they're able to go out of school and therefore contribute together with respect, which is a value, with a skill like presentation, which is now a skill, with the right attitudes to work, and now the knowledge, which the old curriculum had, but didn't have these three. So that's what this whole thing is about.
Thank you, Modern. And when we come back to you next, we shall ask you to help us understand how this new curriculum ranks, with maybe other peer countries and other countries with whom we share the same colonial kind of education. And maybe they have moved on or things like that and adopted new curricula. I'm wondering how we rank, and is it similar? Is it different? Is it better? Will it meet, the demands that are also in those industries? As you know, that many of our learners here after school go to different countries. Does it still meet global needs? I understand there must have been a benchmark somewhere in the Ministry of Education and the Curriculum Development Center, but does it rank? Does it compete with the rest of the world? We shall come back to you with that question. Robert, I'm seeing here that essentially in the subjects being taught, there is no change. Still, English, mathematics, history, physics, biology, chemistry, physical education, religious education, entrepreneurship, and Kiswahili. Those are the compulsory. Then, of course, the externals include culture, ICT, literature, English, art, design, performing arts, technical design, etc., and languages, etc. I'm reading this from Daily Monitor of Thursday, January 5th, 2023. You know, it was interviewing the deputy director of the development center, of the curriculum development center. This was after an interview with the deputy director of the curriculum development center. For any bystander, for any person, this seems to be the same, you know, same things. How easy or how hard is it going to be with the same subjects, you know, to train teachers and even, teachers mainly, because these learners are essentially new. They're not the old learners who experienced it, but teachers who have been teaching these same subjects differently for very long, you know. There's no new subjects. It's not that there are new subjects that are being taught with different modalities, but old subjects and then new things, new ways of teaching for these old subjects. How easy or how hard is it?
Oh, thank you so much, Martin. To answer the first question, I would like to say that there is certainly a change in the subjects. First and foremost, in the old curriculum, we used to have 43 subjects. And with the coming of the new curriculum, that was reduced to 21. Now, the reduction to 21 necessitated that some subjects be merged, for example. Take an example of history. History has been merged with political education to make up one subject. Take an example of accounts and commerce. They have been merged to make one subject called entrepreneurship. And then the other change that I can cite is the new curriculum has got rid of obsolete knowledge, because knowledge keeps evolving. You cannot keep holding on to past facts and thinking that new facts don't evolve. Take an example in geography. The source of the River Nile is no longer Lake Victoria, that you must be aware. So that has been factored in. And then also when we come and talk about, we go to history, for example, there is no need now to study the long distance trade as it used to be, because these days there are other trades. We see Ugandans going to China, we see Ugandans going to Dubai, we see Ugandans going to the West. So these things, this knowledge has been embraced to make it much more relevant. And yes, these subjects are pretty much the same. Because, okay, some of is that there is no need to stretch the study of English to look at the intricate and complicated things in English. All the learners need is the kind of English that make them competent speakers, competent writers, competent communicators in the language. So the details have also been reduced. For example, there is a topic, I'm a language teacher for that matter. There is a topic we call the adjectives, and there is a subtopic called the order of adjectives. So in real life, in the old curriculum, we used to teach students to use over 9 adjectives in one statement. But in real life, that is not possible. You cannot have a learner using all those adjectives. So we have said that whoever requires to learn English at an advanced level will pick it at university and study linguistics and all those other things. But at the level of ordinary level and maybe at A level, all the learner needs is the language that can make him an effective communicator without necessarily going to so many intricacies of English language, as an example for that matter. You said, yes, you don't see much change in this curriculum. There is, for us who sit in the classroom, we see a lot of change here. What have we done? Yes, with that old content, we have retained that which is relevant to the current generation, and then focused more on developing things like critical thinking, developing things like problem solving. Take a recent case when we had COVID. If you look at Uganda, for example, there's so many educated people, scientists, artists, and all that. But it took the effort of, I think, one gentleman, Professor Akwang, to make a remedy for COVID, where were all the land fellows that we have in the country. You get that point. So now what we have done with this, with the new curriculum, is that there is a reduction of too much of theoretical content. Like my fellow panelists, rightly said, that we have removed the teacher from the center. We have now placed the learner at the center to manipulate the subject, to manipulate experiments and come up with theories, come up with practical solutions to problems that affect them. So now what I see is that we have also reduced the learning hours. Lessons are supposed to start at 8 and end at 2:55. After 55, learners go into practical sessions where they engage in project work, where they engage in library research. But if you look at the old curriculum back in the day, you don't seem to see these things. They also engage in games and sports. They engage in debates so that we can promote mature debating whenever these learners are called upon. So I disagree with the version that says, yes, the subjects are pretty much the same. There is some changes that were made. Could you remind me about the second question? There was a lot I really had to say. The second question that you asked.
Adaptability of teachers who have taught these things, the old style for many years.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martin. Yes, from the onset, that was 2020, there was an immediate resistance because actually starting with myself, it took long. It took me 2 sessions of trainings to accept the lower secondary curriculum. And yes, that resistance is normal. It's normal. It's understandable. Anyone else who, when you wish to touch their status quo, will definitely resist. But all I encourage teachers and any other person who doesn't know much about this curriculum is simply to lend it a listening ear. Listen, get the knowledge about it, and then see what you can learn. So over time, there have been trainings right from 2020, and as I speak, there are trainings ongoing right now in Kololo, whereby teachers are being trained in the lower secondary curriculum. If I can get some figures, here, let me quickly run somewhere and get some figures for you. Let me just give me a second. I want to get some figures here. Yes, from the rollout, 90 national facilitators were trained in the lower secondary curriculum. Then over 1,600 master trainers, and that includes myself, were trained, and over 20,000 teachers of senior 1. Now, we have even gone on to train teachers of senior 2, even teachers of senior 3. Now we're preparing actually those even who are going to teach in the candidate classes. So they have been trained 1 on lesson preparation. They have been trained 2 on lesson delivery. They have been trained 3 on assessment. They have been trained in so many aspects that pertain to the lower secondary curriculum. Yes, like I said, there has been that resistance, but as I talk, that resistance is dying out. So many have seemed to be converted and they have seen the rationale in the lower secondary curriculum. Yes, some of us, yes, have been, like myself, I've taught for over 18 years and relinquishing my role as the central, I would quote, fountain of honor, the person who is passing on knowledge to these learners, yes, has been something that some of us have been not comfortable with. But over time, we realize that, well, look here, these learners are not empty vessels. They can exchange ideas among themselves. They can learn. They have some knowledge. Actually, we were shocked when we gave them to do project work. Some of these learners have ideas about these projects. And something that is positive that I'm very happy about with this curriculum is that our students now, the ones in senior 2 and 3, are much more assertive, much more confident. And if I must say, they have some basic skills to solve some of the small problems around themselves. So with that, we're saying, yes, there's a positive in the in the new curriculum.
And I hope, you're saying learners are more assertive, more independent. Hope the beating of learners has phased out by now in schools.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
We hope, learners are not beaten for not understanding things like we used to be, beaten for not getting good grades. I hope that kind of education has been phased out. But you made and it's interesting how we used to. Yeah, we actually were told that we could use 1,000 adjectives in one sentence, and we had short forms of how the order should be. I don't know what that was. It an acronym? What it was, we used to have words where you can have a yellow, big, blue, a yellow, big, quick, like in one sense.
That's what I'm talking about. That yes.
But
So
now,
that,
you're more realistic learners now.
Yes, we're more realistic right now. Yes, that's true.
No, but I mean, in the Bible where there is a word that abundantly beyond, there's that verse that says, you'll be blessed abundantly and beyond and above. But that was an exaggeration, I think, on the part of the person who wrote that text.
That's the truth. That's very true. That's very true.
Text that I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so over to you, Modern. I had posed to you a question earlier.
Yeah, you had asked me a question, a comparative question on how we are performing compared to other neighbors. I think it's an unfair question to Uganda to ask how do we operate comparatively, and this is why. So as John said, we started this the competence-based curriculum for O-level in 2020, January, term 1. In March, we closed schools. We came back in Jan of last year. So effectively, we have run this curriculum for only 1 year, which is last year, because the whole of 2020 we did for 2 months. We closed the whole of 2020, closed the whole of 2021, came back last year, Jan, and we've been doing it. We did last year, and now maybe the ones, if at all any class, I've seen some students in the background. Those could be candidate classes. Maybe those could be the ones that have now done it again. So I think in terms of how do you compare, I think it would be an unfair question for the Ugandan education sector to answer that question, because we really have only 1 year to compare with. The question is, how does this compare internally, but also with other countries? And I want to start with the internal bit. I have done some, as part of my job, I've done some, been doing field work the whole of this month across from Central to Masaka to Ankole to Chigezi. And comparatively, there is a general agreement, both for teachers that implement the oral secondary curriculum and those that don't. There is a general agreement that the kids that are right now in senior 1, 2, 3 are very different from the senior 4, 5, and 6. In Chigezi, in Kavale, where we were last week, a head teacher, because we are training all head teachers who are chairpersons of other head teachers in their districts. One head teacher said that in her school, when they were choosing learners to come to Kampala for, I think there was a debate club between secondary schools. When they were choosing the learners to come to, I think there was a debate in State House, they were meant to bring 2 groups, so team 1 and team 2. And they found out that both the members of team 1 and the members of team 2 were both senior 1 to senior 3 learners. And yet they were always very good debaters in upper classes, senior 5, senior 6. But none of the senior 5 and senior 6 members could outbeat these kids in senior 1 and senior 1, 2, 3. So you cannot claim that it is a mistake that for the first time, senior 1, 2, 3 are outbeating senior 4, 5, and 6. Unless you're going to, if you're going to kick out and rubbish the new curriculum, then you have to explain why learners of senior 1, 2, 3 are out debating learners of 4, 5, and 6, who are older, would understand things better, but are being beaten by the lower secondary classes. So there's need to think through that. Compare the kids in 1, 2, 3 who are undergoing the new competence-based curriculum. Compare them with 4, 5, and 6 who are still undergoing the old curriculum, and explain why these kids in the lower classes are beating the upper classes in terms of the skill. Remember, that's where we started from, the skill of oratory, the skill of presentation, which they are doing in their classes, So that's one thing. So that's at the learner level. At the teacher level, one of the head teachers in Masaka, the Greater Masaka region, said that the teachers in Masaka love the new curriculum because it is not as hectic as it is delivering a lesson in the new curriculum as it was in the old one. And John partly talked about that. You see, when my job is to facilitate learning, which is what the new curriculum is all about, facilitating learning, then I'm not dictating notes. I am not coming with everything and kids are sitting in front of me to receive. I am actually facilitating the teaching and learning process. And in the process, what we call the teacher talk time, the TTT, is less. Why? Because my job is to introduce the topic, make learners participate in the lesson through group work, through presentations, and all I do is bridge the gaps that I've seen in the groups and in the presentations. But I'm not talking for the full, what we call a double lesson, the 80 minutes. No, the kids are actually doing the bigger part of the talking, and my job is to just fill in the gaps in case I feel that there are some. And then after that, lead them to do what we call the activity of integration, you know? So the teacher talk time is less, and therefore I have less headache to deal with. Instead of dealing with, because of group work, I'm not fighting with the kids in the class because all the kids they are in their groups, so they are self-managing, and my job is to walk around and ensure that they are actually understanding, they are discussing the topic that I've given to them, and I'm not really fighting with them on who is making noise in the class, backbenchers versus front benchers, because they're in groups, they are not really backbenchers and front benchers, you know, all that. So that is where I would do the comparison in terms of the internal. Now, in terms of the external, there are some countries in the region that started on this CBC, the competence-based curriculum, earlier than us. Rwanda started it long ago. Kenya started long ago with some challenges, of course, like any other new thing. One of them being cultural change, you know, being able to bring everybody on board. And as John said, I think it would be unfair to expect that me, who has taught for some 20, 30 years in the old style, I'm going to take on this new one, and we just move like that. I've taught this way for some 30 years, I'm about to retire. So you're now changing the curriculum. I don't understand the new methodology, the learner-centered methodology. There's need for you to bring me on board for me to, you know, move with you. So the new curriculum in the neighboring countries has taken on and taken off very well, with some challenges, I think, in Kenya. Rwanda, of course, took off very fast. And so for us to be competitive in the region, we need to change to make sure that we are doing what the other countries are doing. Of course, the external, the countries in Europe, USA, North America, started these things long ago. So we are not really starting from scratch. The other countries like Ghana, that people talk, the way their learners present, they are way, way better than our Ugandan learners. So my answer to your question would be, let's not compare with, are we doing better than them? Are they doing better than us? Let's first compare internally the classes that have been undergoing this new curriculum, compare them with the old ones that have not. Are the old ones better than the older classes, better than the new class in terms of their values, in terms of their attitudes, in terms of their skills and knowledge? Would you compare the two groups? And then now compare Uganda with other neighboring countries. Do we right now have a better educational system with the old curriculum compared to the other countries that have onboarded the new curriculum earlier than us? I think that's where the comparison would be.
Thank you for that, analysis and comparison. Well, this new curriculum has not in any way also ousted the examination, the examination, the fact that at the end of the day, students have examinations. I'm wondering, maybe in simple terms, how that will be, because we've noticed that it's competence-based and not necessarily the one we knew of, rote learning, etc. And from reading, we noticed that it's not only UNEB that is examining, but school is also examining, and another, there are other stakeholders. How is, simply help us understand how the examinations are being done and how students are assessed to, at the end of the day, make a score that will be acceptable at to different schools, but also recognizable, nationally and even outside, should such learners seek to pursue further education in other places. Over to you, John.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martin. One critical thing I wanted to share before I answer your question is to answer the question that Modern tried to put into perspective. For example, do we have a better education system now than in the past? And my answer is yes. And as you're going to see, I'm going to answer that in relation to the questions that you asked. To begin with, on assessment, there is a focus on the formative form of assessment. And what is this kind of form of assessment? This is the kind of assessment that is ongoing. This is the kind of assessment that is carried out in the classroom while the teaching and learning is taking place. So why the focus on that? Because the classroom is where the learning takes place. It can be outside, but that's still a classroom kind of environment. This is where the learning is taking place. So to begin with, you can give the learners an activity, for example, to go and discuss in their groups. So while doing that, there is a process in this new curriculum that we call triangulation. The teacher will be conversing the students. By conversing, he will give them a task, explain to them what he or she wants them to do. And then later on, he moves around, or he or she moves around to see that the students are doing exactly that which he has required them to do. Then in the process, that will lead them to produce something that we call a product. This product could be an AC, this product could be a skit, it could be a drama, it could be a song, depending on whatever subject, it could be an experiment for that matter. So to begin with, we emphasize, the new curriculum emphasizes so much on the formative assessment that takes place in the classroom, and then in that process, the teacher can be able to look at what each individual learner is doing. The learners themselves can assess each other's work, and by looking at the group work, you can pair them up and they assess what each other has done. Then when a teacher is done delivering content for a particular topic or chapter, we are required to give what is called an activity of integration. The activity of integration encompasses the various learning outcomes that have been taught in the course of that chapter. And then you said to try to see whether all the learning outcomes that you have taught have been achieved. Then if it's not the case, then you can plan to do the following, maybe plan to do a remedial lesson, plan to change your teaching methods. And, it gives you a picture before you move on to the next chapter for that matter. Then the other critical thing in assessment with the new curriculum is that of criterion reference assessment. In that, unlike the old system, which was more of norm kind of assessment, where we compare learners, one learner against another, a learner from this school against another from another school, in the lower secondary curriculum, or rather in the new curriculum, we are saying learners are not compared against each other. But instead, what happens is that a predetermined set of criteria is developed. The teacher develops that with the students. Take an example. You as a language teacher, you want them to write a letter, a formal letter for that matter. So you first discuss with them what is embedded in the formal letter. Then once the students have agreed what is embedded in the formal letter, they go ahead and do a task that we've given them on writing a formal letter. Then while they are doing that, with the criteria they developed, they'll be able to check every other thing they did in the writing process against what they and you developed. So that's what we call the criteria. So you are not comparing learner A and learner B, learner from school A to learner school B. You are simply comparing the learner against a predetermined set of criteria that they developed together with you. So what's the beauty here? The learners seem to understand the marking guide, if I must say. The learners seem to understand the process that they are going through. So then, yes, you have talked about issues to do with marks and exams. Yes, out of public demand, it was proven it was found to be necessary that exams, for example, end of year assessment be introduced in the lower secondary curriculum for Two main reasons. Others are there, but the first one is on the issue of accountability. Parents seem to understand more the old way of having the marks. So there was that too much of that pressure. And then, of course, NDCDC had to develop an end-of-year form of assessment in which a learner is assessed across all the various topics that he or she has done in that entire year, in that particular class. Then also, the end of year was also found to be necessary for purposes of certification. Take an example. You want to join another curriculum outside maybe this country. How will you be embraced, for example, if you wanted to go and continue your further education in the Western world? You have to have a documentation that speaks about what you know and can do. So it was found to be necessary that it's important that we have some form of examinations so that we can provide accountability to parents, to the Ministry of Education and other stakeholders, and also for purposes of certification, that we certify that this particular student is good at this and can do the following, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. And yeah, and as a follow-up, the projects and products, is there a way that these students are engaged? I mean, I understand that you said it's not supposed to be competitive, putting student against another, but is there a way that these projects are given sort of priority to, at the end of the day, influence maybe findings and innovations? I think I had just left. I was maybe just beginning university, or I was in high school then, when some time back, a high school student in the US, of course, discovered through the projects, invented a pancreatic cancer detection machine. I remember that his name was Thomas Andrak. I don't know, I haven't since followed up. But also, even within our times, there are some projects that were tried, but then that was not within the mainstream academics. It was just maybe science club developing their own innovations. But now that is part of the mainstream, are there sort of criteria that are specific and intentional about spurring innovations that would eventually create solutions? Yeah, you could just answer that briefly. You perhaps referred to it earlier, but
yes, Martin. Yes, the priority is being given to projects because all schools are required to set time every day from 2:55 onwards for project work and any other classroom kind of, sometimes we give students a lot of work and then we don't give them time to proceed with this work. And like you rightly said, yes, some of the things are mainstream. The projects that we give them are mainstream in that you introduce students to project work and then require them to review the various learning outcomes that you have taught them and ask them, which area do you think we can develop a project from? And then they'll give you so many others. Then depending on teachers and so many other people, you can say, well, let's zero down on the following learning outcomes and let's try out the following projects. Then you tell them what it entails. They ask you for resources, you provide them the resources to do those projects, and so on and so forth. Yes, we are liberal. We are liberal in that much as it's project work, and then it's mainstream. For my class, for example, I encourage them to proceed with some of these projects even beyond classroom time, even during holidays at home. If an idea intrigues them, I encourage them to keep trying out those ideas, because this is how the great Albert Einsteins became who they were. It was out of trying out things. We can't keep regurgitating laws of physics, different theories. It is through self-study, personal time, engagement with the content that these learners can discover solutions to various problems. And the results of some of these projects, if you have been very keen on television, you could have been seeing some of these. There was one that was run on NTV, I think late last year, about a school, St. Kizito, somewhere in Namgongo. And then in northern Uganda, the couple of projects that students have been doing, and so many others that are not being on TV, but schools are doing. So yes, priority is being given to these projects. and
Wow.
students are being, yes.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Modern. I want to understand the place of other stakeholders, mainly in the assessment area, like UNEB. I had asked it, John, but you could give a follow-up. UNEB, and others have seen something we didn't know in our times, Directorate of Industrial Training also being part of this, assessment process. Please help us understand the role of those stakeholders.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Martin. So there, I would say in assessment, there are three, to the best of my knowledge, John can add, because he's the practitioner. There are three stakeholders in this assessment under the competence-based curriculum. I'm trying to run out from calling it the new the new O-level curriculum because it is meant for everybody in the secondary sector. So the first layer is the school level assessment. And the thinking is that the school, and that's what John called formative assessment, the school keeps on recording the marks that the learners have got in their formative assessment and their summative at the end of the term, that school level assessment. And that school level assessment caters for 20% of the total assessment that will be done at the end of the cycle, that is O level and A level. So assume that a child starts their senior one and has been getting their assessment kept. And so by senior 4, as they come to do their UNEB, they already have their 20% already got in a system that is, of course, managed by UNEB. So each term, maybe each year, the school is sending those results to the center at UNEB. So by senior 4, the child has got their 20% already catered for. The important thing is not even that, the question is why. And the answer is in the issues of equity and inclusion. You see, by the time I come to do my UNEB in senior 4, and I am sick on that day, you cannot claim that I have failed just because in 1 month when the UNEB was being done, I was sick. You see? So if my results have always been sent to the center, by the end of my cycle, by the end of my senior 4, all I'm trying to prove is 80% of my capacity, of my abilities. And so that solves that problem of learners not being, it may not just be sickness, it might be in senior 4, that's when I lost my parent. So I'm not mentally not stable, pass like I would have passed. In senior 4, maybe I've had some school fees challenges. And so I was chased from school. I came back on the day when the exams were starting. So you're saying that I failed, yet actually I've not failed. The environment I was operating in that 1 month of UNEB was not favoring my passing. So if I've already been submitting my 20%, then that makes me a very good, I mean, even if I don't perform very well in the 80%, I at least have already been assessed continuously and my 20% is already catered for. So that is the school level assessment, the 20%. Now, the 80% is the UNEB, and that is mainly for examination. So at the end of my senior 4, I do my exams, and UNEB that sets those exams, which will be competence-based, not knowledge-based, or a mixture of the two, now assesses me on the 80% balance. So they also assess and give me marks, and now as they send out the results, they merge my 20% with my 80%, which I've done at the end of the cycle in senior 4, and therefore now give me results. Now that is the academic assessment. So that is the stakeholder number 2, UNEB. Now there is a third stakeholder, DIT, the Director of Industrial, DIT, I've forgotten what is it called.
Directory of Industrial Training.
Training, yes,
yeah,
DIT, training. Yeah. So now DIT comes in senior 3. So the first group that will be taking on that assessment at the current senior 3s. So in senior 3, the learners who are now going to be taken to senior 4 are supposed to be assessed by DIT. And what is DIT assessing? You have been teaching this kid from senior 1 to senior 3 as teacher John Robert. In the course of the senior 1 to senior 3, the learner thinks that the competence they want to really proceed with in life is, for example, carpentry, or it is English people usually do novel writing or whatever it is. Others could choose maybe harvesting or maybe post-harvest handling. So the DIT comes in to assess that specific skill and provide for those that have passed, give them a certificate that is DIT level 1. Now, DIT level 1 certificate is actually an equivalent of senior 4. You know, there is that UNEB usually gives those when people are going to stand for elections, mainly that's when that happens, where you find somebody does not have a senior 4 certificate, but has an equivalent of senior 4. So DIT level 1 is actually an equivalent of an O-level or UCE certificate. Why is that important? Because I'm interested in the why. Why is that important? There are some people, some learners, who, because of reasons they are not in control of, might drop out in senior 3. Now, they have failed to go to senior 4, and unfortunately, once you don't go to senior 4, then the only certificate you have is P7. So it's like you've not studied at all, the whole of your O-level. And that could be because of reasons like my parents have died, my guardian can no longer afford to pay my school fees. All those reasons, I have fallen sick. But if a child has that DIT level 1, then they have got an equivalent of UCE certificate, and therefore they can go out and use that UCE certificate to do anything that a person of senior 4 would have done. So that is in terms of the certification. But in terms of the skilling, the competence, if I have done a DIT level 1, which is equivalent of senior 4, and for example, I've done my that DIT level 1, for example, in mechanics or like wiring, that's my competence, the one I've decided to be certified on. Then that means that I can now go to a DIT institution, give them my DIT level 1 certificate, and do a DIT level 2, which is now equivalent to senior 6 UCE. Now, if I did my DIT level 1 in senior 3, and I go and do maybe one year and get my DIT level 2, that means that I will have got an equivalent of senior 6 in 4 years, not 6. I don't know whether you're following my argument. Because I got my DIT level 1 at the end of senior 3, I went and used 1 other year and got my DIT level 2, which is now equivalent to senior 6. And so I have my equivalent of senior 6 in 4 years, not 6 years. That way, if anything happens to my parents, to my guardians, I have something, I have a certificate, which is an equivalent of senior 6, not senior 4, you know? So that helps that equity and inclusion challenge of people finishing senior 6 and people failing to reach senior 6 and therefore having to use senior 4, but 2, finishing senior 4, and if somebody asks, you just go and ask anybody who has finished senior 4 now, what can you do? They have no idea. They have finished their senior 4, but they have nothing they can do because the UCE certificate doesn't tell you what actually have you qualified to do. But if I have got my DIT level 1 certificate in wiring, then I'm into wiring. It's my competence. That's what I want to do. If my DIT level 1 is in carpentry, then I'm into carpentry. That's what I can do. Compare that with somebody in the current setup who has got a senior 4 certificate. They have the numbers, they have the grades, but ask them, so after getting this certificate, what can you do? 0, you know? So I think that's where this question of certification comes in and the assessment comes in. So on one level, we have the school level assessment, the 20%. You have the UNEB assessment, the 80%, which makes now the full 100% that a person will get in senior at the end of senior 4. And then midway in senior 3, you have the DIT certification, which will now give the learner something, you know, a skill, a competence that they can then go out into the world and do with or without the senior 4 certificate. So those are the 3 levels of certification.
Thank you. We are now at the end of this show, and I'll give each one of you 2 minutes to make your concluding remarks. Yes, Robert, You could also respond to any issue that hasn't been touched, but also maybe was touched partially, and as you conclude in 2 minutes.
All right, thank you so much, Martin, and thank you, Modern, for that incisive submission. What I wanted to say to add on to this is that the new curriculum, new as it is, I just encourage people to learn more about it. That's one, because there is a positive in it. One being that we are not simply promoting rote learning. The second is that it is making learners much more active in the learning process. And then most importantly, it seems to tap into the skills that these learners can translate into the world of work. And most importantly, related to that is that we want to produce people who can be employed beyond the borders of this country. And that's why it's focusing on knowledge, understanding the skills, values, and attitudes. And then one more thing that I wanted to say is that the old curriculum was too much elitist in nature, in that it catered for only those, what we'd call intellectual, just those the mental intellect alone. Mainly, that was the main focus. But we are saying that this curriculum takes into consideration two kinds of students. That learner who is very good academically, and also the other learner who is equally good in the practical aspects. And that's why I therefore say that with the new curriculum, there will be no failures. There will be no dropouts, just like Martin rightly said. And how does this come about? Take an example. We are saying that, yes, there is the UNEB kind of curriculum that we will be following. And then DIT also provides for modular kind of assessment that is done in Senior 3, like Modern rightly said. And then there are subjects, there are key subjects that are captured here, and such as agriculture, art and design, entrepreneurship, ICT, nutrition and food technology, performing arts, physical education, and technology and design. And then what DIT has done, it has identified occupations that it can assess and certify students on. An example can be that of being a cook, a baker, a potter, a painter, a graphic designer, functional or interior designer, florist, poultry farmer. So like Modern rightly said, yes, for it specifically speaks on to what you are able to do, unlike the UNEB kind of certification. And that's why this curriculum, therefore, is very, very rich. A learner simply who, for various reasons, drops out of school will be able just to engage in productive work and perhaps raise some money and resume the studies. A learner can also decide and say, well, I want to take the DIT mode of assessment in which I pursue modules particularly, and then he keeps getting the equivalents of Senior 4, Senior 6, and then eventually diploma and degree. So we are saying now these two, when we fuse this curriculum together, it has taken care of every other person in society. And therefore, and then most importantly, I would think that if we really do our job as teachers very well and ensure that we tap into these learners' skills, that we will produce people who will be able to contribute to the economy. When you look at the Juakali, for example, that Modern talked about, there's so many people into carpentry workshops, the people who are doing fabrications, people who are painting and all that. The old curriculum doesn't seem to recognize them, and yet their contribution to the economy and to even our welfare is very good, is very rich. So for that matter, the curriculum is taking note of that. And I don't know what more I would have loved to say, but that's all I could share for now. And yeah, thank you
for that, Robert. Modern?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting us for this show. I think my parting shots would be, like anything new, we should expect that not everybody will come on board. That would be one. Two, we should know that given the resource envelope of both the Ministry of Education and NCDC, which is the body in charge of with the mandate for curriculum review and rollout, they also don't have a lot of resources. So even the buy-in of the different stakeholders won't be that fast. You know, we also have to accept that. But the thing to accept also is that clearly the new curriculum, the competence-based curriculum cannot be compared with a knowledge-based curriculum. No, especially given where we're going. You cannot have any positive where you claim that the old curriculum is better than the new competence-based curriculum. And so I think my ask would be, can we bring everybody on board, especially the teacher and school leader, the head teachers? Because those are the ground soldiers, they're the ones who implement this program on a daily. So can we have a system where head teachers are brought on board in terms of their training, not just the how of the new curriculum, but the why? Because teachers, as Jonas said, have been taken through how do you do a learner-centered lesson, how do you assess, but can we make it bigger and go to the why? Why have we changed from how we are teaching previously, how we are teaching now? Because once the teacher and the teacher understands the why, then the how becomes very easy to take on. So that is at school level. But there's another stakeholder that I think is important and has somehow not been brought on board in the new curriculum, and that's the parent. The parent pays the fees for this learner. The guardian looks after this kid who is coming to your school. But can we bring this parent on board so that they know why it's important that the learner takes on this curriculum? So for example, the issue of assessment, the new assessment system is the 1, 2, 3. Parents are used to 20%, the child is not doing well, 50% they are average, 70, 80% they are doing very 100, they are excellent. So when the system is changed to competence-based, where you're now dealing with 1, 2, 3, what is a 1 and what is a 3? Has my child passed when he gets 2.5, or has he or she failed? So bring the parent on board makes them very central in the learner's learning process, the children's learning process. And therefore, when the child comes back home with a report card, I as a parent can guide them, work with them to improve on their performance in class. If I don't know what the report card means, then I can't support my child. So creating a system where parents are brought on board in this rollout of the rural secondary curriculum, I think is key, because they are finally the ones who pay the school fees. Even for USC schools, they somehow contribute. And if they're in a private school, of course, I pay 100% the cost of my learners' school fees. So bring them on board is very important. The governance bodies, the board of governors, do they understand this curriculum? The PTA, when a teacher is complaining that they don't understand the curriculum, but the chairperson PTA does not understand what this curriculum is about, how is the PTA going to support the teacher to become better? You know? So bring everybody in the school system in secondary on board, so that it is a holistic rollout, not just to a teacher and the head teacher, but let everybody know and therefore participate in this rollout. And I believe this should not be a problem for only NCDC and the Ministry of Education. I think other stakeholders should participate. Civil society, where I belong, should participate, because this is our sector. We work with government. Parents should participate. Everybody should participate, so that at the end of the day, it is not NCDC and ministry that are being charged for rolling out a curriculum, but the whole sector is in charge of rolling out the curriculum. And therefore, once it works out, all of us are proud of the products of that rollout. So I think my parting shots would be, let all of us, media, by the way, is another sector, another big player, media. Can media make it an issue to let people understand what this whole new curriculum is about, so that we can then work together to have a learner who does not just have the knowledge, but also has the skills, the competencies, the values and attitudes to go out of the school system and thrive in the world after school.
Thank you very much, Modern, for that closing statement, for those closing remarks. Thank you to John. I believe this curriculum will do well. Many times we are skeptical about things, the ministries do and many things governments do, but this is a curriculum that was actually developed by competent experts in this area, technocrats who know this area, and I'm optimistic it will do well, and it will change the trajectory of education in this country to create more, to make more useful and competent citizens, competent people that go through the education system of Uganda. Uganda has always had good education. Of course, it reached that point when it got out of fashion and it was no longer meeting the demands of the time. And as is our culture, we rebranded. As is our norm, as is our style, we rebranded. And we are now doing something better in this new curriculum. We know it will influence people, it will influence others into creating innovations, innovating and being quite competent in many areas, science, the arts, name it. We're optimistic and we wish the teachers, the learners, the parents well in this journey, and also other stakeholders. But we shall not stop to hold those responsible accountable. We shall not stop to follow up, because all we want is for things and systems to work in this country that we love so much. Thank you very much, Modern. Thank you, John. Thank you for Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for being a part of this and bringing us this show. I've been your host, Martin, and I wish you a great week.